Hello.
Hi, we are here at Shella Radio, and my name is Mathilde. I also go by Gustav, and this is...
Buddha, and I use he, him, and they, them pronouns.
Oh yeah, good idea actually. I use all pronouns. I actually at work I only use they, them, because I have also a boring side corporate job, and I feel like
It's a political statement.
Yeah, it's a political, and also those people should learn, you know?
Yeah, they should. They should get used to it.
Yeah, so I've been very adamant at the workspace, but otherwise it's all pronouns. And I'm from Denmark originally, but I moved here today. It's 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Anniversary.
Yeah, it is, since I moved to Prague. But before I lived in Prague, I lived in Armenia for a while. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's me.
And I'm coming from Turkey. I've been in Prague for about 3 years now, almost done. And I am working here. I'm doing my master's at Charles University on gender studies. And I'm working as a kindergarten teacher in a bilingual kindergarten.
Getting exploited by the system.
Yep, getting exploited.
Well, yeah. As I said, I work in a boring corporate, so maybe kindergarten is better. Though
it is fun.
Yeah,
it is fun.
At least some decent people, maybe.
Yeah, children are decent enough.
Yeah, until a certain age.
Yeah, until a certain age, definitely.
And then as well, we are both part of an organization called Pangea or Pangea. We have a conversation today about the name actually, and that's why we're here, because Shella Radio was so kind to invite us to talk about Pangea and the work we do, and why we're here
and our experiences as volunteers in an NGO and also as individuals who live in Prague.
Yeah.
So,
should I start by introducing Pangea to those
Please.
who don't know it? Yeah. Okay, so for those that don't know, Pangea is like a quite young intersectional feminist and queer NGO. We have been registered as an NGO for about a year now, but we've been operating since March 2022. Mm-hmm. And we originally started because me and some other people at university was very angry and frustrated with the level of education that we were receiving at our university. I studied international relations and human rights, and as you can imagine, it was a lot about Western philosophy and Hobbes and Rousseau and Locke and these really old white dudes and what they said a long time ago. And there was nothing, in general, the curriculum was really heteronormative and very Eurocentric. And I remember one specific class we had in political philosophy, and we were doing Rousseau, who we already covered in high school, but we did him anyway again. And I said, could we at least do Mary Wollstonecraft, her Rights of Women, because it's a great counter, as you know, maybe you don't, but she wrote that book as a counter argument to Rousseau.
Yeah.
And so I said, could we at least do her? And do her maybe. I think a lot of people did her. And I think I would love to too, if I was in that age. Sadly,
was that on the table?
I don't think it was ever on the table. But read her. And I was told that, she was a feminist, obviously, so she was not a philosopher. Yeah. And definitely not a political philosopher, no. Right? And this is a British, end bourgeoisie kind of, I think, middle class lady, and she was considered too radical, whatever, for our political class. So that's kind of why we came together. And in the beginning of Pangea, we were just meeting up in my tiny kitchen apartment, or student apartment, and we drank wine and talked shit about the patriarchy. Yeah. And that worked well for a while. For half a year, but then I think a lot of people wants to drink wine and talk shit about the patriarchy, or not drink wine, but at least talk shit about the patriarchy. Yep. So we were too many people for my apartment, and hence we moved over to the LGBT center, which is in Prague 1, where they had more space, and we could rent it almost very cheaply. Mm-hmm. And we did our education sessions there, which means every 2 weeks on Tuesday nights at 8:00. We gather, it's free, it's in English, it's open to anyone, regardless of sex or gender or sexuality or background. And then we kind of take turns in educating each other, talking about different feminist, queer, post-colonial topics that we think are important. Mm-hmm. And it can be anything from ecofeminism to women in war to introduction to BDSM. I think we had once. To introduction to post-colonial theory, to Spivak, Said. And then, of course, different people, show up for different kind of education sessions. And then from there, we grew to more kind of, when you do the education sessions, then suddenly you meet with a bunch of interesting people who want to learn more. So then we also started looking into politics. We became more aware. We started engaging in advocacy, some demonstrations, some fundraisers, some petitions. And we started becoming more active on social media, both in the political area, but in political space in Prague, but also for simply community building. People wanted a space where they could just come together and also just have fun and talk and find friends. So now we do a bunch of different events like the Queer Bazaar, which happens around once a month for young queer artists. We also do a movie night, which is just silly campy movies we watch together because it's cute. We also have had some, I think we had a naked wine and paint at some point, which was quite a big hit.
I remember you mentioning that before.
Yeah, we should bring it back, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. And what else have we done?
Stitch and Bitch.
Well, yeah, Stitch and Bitch.
And
so
it's coming back.
You can come and embroider or stitch or crochet and gossip. And since I don't really do the crafty stuff because I'm not very crafty, usually I pour the tea and listen. Well, I pour the tea literally and metaphorically.
I'm gonna be joining as well, and I'm just gonna be sitting and bitching.
Exactly. It's a half of the name. That's why. Yeah. So that is some of the stuff that we do in Pangea, and I wanna do a little shout out. If you don't know us and now you think, oh, this sounds interesting, then you should definitely follow us on Instagram on Pangea_Prague, or on Facebook or Relotion, or we have a, merging TikTok, but it's very small. Very small. And then we also have a website, which is pangeapublic.org. So enough about the boring stuff. But basically what I do is kind of the administrative coordination part. And maybe you can tell what you do.
I am one of the education coordinators in Pangea, and what we do is basically providing educational resources, and we are responsible of bi-monthly educational sessions from outside activists and feminists and experts. And we also prepare some modules, some educative content, and soon we're going to start posting educative posts on Instagram. We are in charge of the educative material in Pangea.
And don't judge us by the educational material currently available on our website, because we are working on it.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. We just started this team. It's a very new team, but it's very exciting because we have a lot of people not in Prague, but who follows Pangea and wants to be involved, and I think a lot of people want to learn more and are very frustrated with the kind of education that you're getting in Europe and possibly around the world, especially in politics and humanities, and the kind of bias and prejudice and the curriculum we have available to us. And it's not just my universities. I considered moving to Charles University, or I even looked into some other, the university in Copenhagen. It was the same curriculum.
Well, honestly, you expect it to be better, right? Doing humanities and doing masters on gender studies, you expect it to be more inclusive. But my experience was not that different from yours at Charles, and it's not.
But you do gender studies now.
Yeah.
But so you should be much better.
It is better. I won't say it's like worse, but I think it could be much better because it is very Eurocentric, as you said. Actually, even like very West-centric, not even Euro. Maybe like Western Hemisphere is the focus.
French philosophers, the essentialists, it's like British, American philosophers.
And like it's an international program. So we have a lot of students from all around the world. We have students from Siberia, India, China. I have my colleagues from there. And I remember only one time this Chinese colleague got to say something about her experience in China. And that was kind of handled like, well, but that's China, like Chinese context. They're like...
So like it's not relevant to this course.
It's not relevant.
Okay, I see. That's why...
this is the point that I was trying to make. Like, it's just, you expect it to be better, but there's like a lot of way. There's a ton of shit of things that we can do still.
For sure. So that's part of what Pangea hopes to do in the future is to make this kind of educational content available for free and not just for people in Prague, but for people. It would be amazing if it was online. It was available to people around the world who is stuck in these kind of courses where they feel like they're not learning. But obviously it takes an immense amount of work. And right now we have a team of 3 people?
3, 4, yeah, growing.
Who's doing it once in a while, like a few hours in their free times a week. But maybe in the future we could create imagine how cool it would be if there was some kind of webs like Duolingo, but for cool critical education, and you could choose your course, and then you can kind of go, no, I already learned about Bova, I'm ready for my Ankalo, and then you can,
that would be actually amazing.
Or Autoload, that would be cool.
Maybe we should put it as a goal in the future, honestly.
And also maybe become billionaires so we can actually create it. That would be the next goal.
Let's see.
And part of what we do in Pangea with education, and what is so important to us, is also to work together with other collectives who have different experiences and a different kind of perspective than that we do, or who come with different backgrounds. So, for example, as we talked about these kind of lectures we did one of these lectures with Prague for Palestine during the Pride Week. Obviously, first of all, there was a huge debate about whether it was okay, even as a intersectional critical collective, to partake in Pride Week, because we know Pride Week is getting sponsored by big corporations who support directly or indirectly Israel. And hence we really had some conversation about whether it makes sense to, for example, do this lecture that we did on homocolonialism and pinkwashing in Israel, and do that on the program list of Prague Pride, who are sponsored by these corporations. And I don't know whether we actually found the right solution or whether it's okay that we ended up doing it. But I think in the end, we decided that it was more important to be there and to have a conversation and to get more awareness out than to make a standpoint that no one would know about, because then we didn't do it, and then no one would know that we didn't do it. But I don't know.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think even just the mention is representation gives a lot to any cause. So I think it was the right decision to do it.
And there was a lot of people there. I
mean,
mean, there was people hanging in through the windows, people standing in the back. I was very surprised. We asked for one of those rooms for 20 people, and we had 100 people, I think, showing up. And I think that it's also partly due to this kind of collaboration we did with Prague for Palestine, which is such a cool organization. If you don't follow them, you absolutely should. Especially on Instagram, but also on Facebook, where they post all of their events, because they're doing a lot of the amazing kind of work in Prague, focused around fundraisers and demonstrations, especially with focus on ceasefire. And I think what is important as a queer and intersectional group like ours is really this kind of cross collective collaboration.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, on that point, maybe we can talk about what we mean by intersectionality. What is intersectional feminism in that sense, and why it matters to us as the organization, and also in individual levels, why it is important for me. Maybe I can try to explain intersectionality a little bit. So intersectionality is basically interconnectedness of some categories that we see, that we group each other with, or ourselves with, and these are race, class, gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation, ability, and so as these notions are interconnected, the oppressions or the experiences of every individual differs from one another. In that, and it was first brought out by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, sorry. And so basically a very concrete example for intersectionality would be probably a black woman is subjected to misogyny and racism. But her misogyny is different from the misogyny a white woman experiences, and the racism she is exposed to is different from a black man's experience. So intersectionality kind of gives us this framework to actually understand how the power system works on individuals, how different notions play in this power system.
And I would say some people would definitely say it's not true, but for me and for Pangea, like if it is not intersectional, then it's not really feminism.
Yes.
Because we know a lot of groups of feminists who, especially in like Western Europe, but around the world, who practice this white kind of feminism, where class or ability or race, especially, are not taken into consideration at all. And I feel like this kind of feminism is also often super harmful and really harmful, especially to other women and to women of color or to women of different classes or indigenous background. So that is one of those things that we are very firm on in Pangea, and that we are always striving to improve and to do better as a collective.
As like feminists fighting for equality, if you are not fighting for an intersectional feminist cause, then what you're going to do is just going to encourage the systemic oppression and inequality itself.
And this definitely also overlaps with the sense that Pangea promotes itself as a queer collective. Because, as we know, like J.K. Rowling and these other assholes who kind of practice a feminism. I don't think it is actually a feminism, but they say it's a kind of feminism where it's very
self-claimed feminist.
Yeah, self-claimed feminist. That's very transphobic. But this completely misses the point. I mean, feminism, intersectional feminism, is all about kind of questioning the way gender discrimination happens around the world and demanding equal opportunities for all. But it is not about kind of putting more focus on the binary. It's the opposite. It's about kind of dismantling the boundaries, because as most radical or like intersectional feminists would argue, gender is a construct, gender is performance, gender is a way that we all behave, with the way we dress up, the way we walk, the way we are taught to sit on a chair. That's gender. And we can never really go beyond the patriarchal world we live in unless we start to really dismantle the kind of very binary systems we have going. So it's a completely counterintuitive and a paradox to say that you can have transphobic, or what is it called? The TERF feminism, because it makes no sense. It's against the purpose of questioning gender and demanding equality. So hence Pangea also very much so advocates itself as a queer collective. And for those who are confused, why is it queer? Why don't we say LGBT? And I think this is a kind of important distinction to make. You will see nowhere almost on Pangea's Instagram do we talk about ourselves as an LGBT collective, and it will be nowhere on the website. And it's not that most of us are not actually LGBT. I think most of us consider ourselves LGBT, but LGBT is quite a modern term, and it's a term that usually refers to sexual identity only, like sexual orientation only, whether you like the same sex or whether you consider yourself, even if you're non-binary like I am, then still, if you consider all genders sexually attractive, though of course intersectionality is a different thing, or asexuality. But with queer, it's a political term. It's a political term that came out of the 1970s liberation movement. And the queer liberation movement was not about these identity politics. It was all about standing in solidarity with newly independent countries in the subaltern. It was about dismantling gender, dismantling this nuclear monogamous family setting, and very much questioning the military. And as we know today, a lot of LGBT politics are focused around getting access to marriage and adoption, and especially in the US right now, access to the military and being out proud. But as you know, Spivak very controversially said, wow, great, now white gay people can go and kill black gay people. And obviously it's a very provocative statement, but what was meant with it was just that we have to be careful with the kind of politics that we practice. And though I completely understand why, I'm not saying that gay people shouldn't have the same rights as straight people and shouldn't have, if other people have marriage equality, then maybe, gay people obviously should have access to marriage and children too. We just have to consider whether these institutions, especially marriage and military, are good institutions in the first place. Are these institutions we want to support as queer people? And is there other important things like class inequality, racial inequality, homelessness, like capitalism, that might also be considered queer causes, considering how many queer people around the world, meaning not just people with a different sexual orientation, but people with a different political orientation, with a different expression, with a kind of rebellious, resistant, misfit attitude to the world. And just people who don't fit in, or people who are considered different by virtue of being, let's say, an immigrant or a refugee, or being differently able. I mean, in queer theory, you consider these people queer too, right?
Subjects of queer
and subjects of queerness, and these people. For many of these people, of course, also for these people, sometimes these are the priorities. But for a lot of people, having children or getting married or joining the military is not the priority. But having food on your table or having dignity in your workspace,
to be perceived as a human being,
So hence, I think it's one of those things for Pangea that we talk a lot about, is the importance of embracing a wider understanding of what is today LGBT politics. And then being very questioning about the kind of LGBT space we create. As we know, I think we can talk a bit about this in Prague especially, but especially around Europe and the US and or Canada. I don't know much about Canada politics, but I can assume that maybe it's the same. But a lot of LGBT spaces are very, very racist and quite misogynistic.
And it's questionable how queer, or what makes them queer in an LGBT space. Is it an LGBT space? Like, there is a distinction. Is it an LGBT space, or is it a queer space that kind of challenges the norms? Because it's hard to define what queer is, but in my opinion, my own definition would be the notion that challenges all the norms that we live in the heteronormative world.
All those things that challenge what is taken for granted, what is considered natural. So it is that thing which is not considered natural, which is considered abnormal, right? And whether that is someone of a different sexual orientation or someone who is an immigrant or refugee in an otherwise, let's say, very wide space.
Yeah. How was your experiences in Prague?
In Prague with the LGBT spaces?
Yeah.
Bad.
Spaces in Prague.
There is I think there is definitely queer spaces. But they're usually connected with, let's say, Prague for Palestine, with United for Gaza, with Safe Space Bookstore. There are these spaces that have, they also don't promote themselves as LGBT, but promote themselves on their, let's say, their collaboration or their support of Palestine, or with their support of Vietnamese immigrants, or with their support of the Roma people, or even with their anarchist or socialist thinking, right? I think these spaces are much more queer. In the LGBT, self-proclaimed LGBT spaces we have here, very few of them allow, first of all, many of them doesn't even allow women. The biggest one, I think, if it's still there, I only went once and I was very, very rudely rejected at the door. And I was in a binder and in a shirt, and I was going by my name Gustav, and I had a very shaved head, and I think even in some spaces I could pass for being masculine. Or being a man, but I was told I couldn't enter because I was not a cis man, so I couldn't enter the factory, which is this sex fetish space in Prague. And on top of that, we have several LGBT clubs, like the Piano Bar, the Circus something, the Tamix, whatever they're called. And I have been to most of them, and I've never felt comfortable because I'm the only female presenting person there. And everyone is usually older, white Czech men. And it is a lot in the leather scene, which I love the leather scene, but it's not very inclusive to other people. At one point, actually, when we went with a Pangea flyer for this place called Cafe Bar Flirt, which is in Prague 1, I went with a Pangea flyer, and they were asking me, "Oh, what's this about?" And I said, well, this is a feminist queer collective. And he just shook his head at me and said, "We don't do feminism."
Oh.
And I was like, what? And we don't do feminism.
This is always so surprising.
And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go. I was so shocked. But actually, I shouldn't have been that shocked, because in general, there's not that many LGBT spaces that do include women or non-binary or non-masculine people. And especially many of these spaces, is if you are on top of that also of color, or if you are differently abled, or if you don't present as gay in the right way. Let's say you have a big beard, you don't look gay enough, whatever that means. You don't get access. So
that's actually really interesting. I mean, it's I guess we should be already used to it, I guess. But it's really heartbreaking, honestly, because I lived my whole life in Turkey and in a small town, and I didn't have access to many queer spaces or LGBT spaces as well, LGBTQ spaces. I came here expecting, this is Europe, so, but of course there is a certain level there are some spaces that I do feel a bit of community, a bit of belonging, and that makes me feel better. And I mean, the reason why I am a part of Pangea today is to find a community, is to become part of this collective, which is amazing for me. And yeah, so it is different than, of course, what I'm used to, but it still lacks a lot of things. First of all, I think these spaces, queer, gay, LGBTQ spaces in Prague, what they lack, first of all, is a critical thinking behind it, and a political perspective, a perception. I think it's lacking those very much, and mostly built just to make profit. And I don't feel like their main goal is to create a community or support the community in Prague. I think it is mostly profit focused, very capitalistic spaces, just workplaces, bars, which is not actually very functional.
But I do actually, this is a question I've long thought about, because it feels to me, for those who don't know, most LGBT bars around the world are only for men, or very much, you can enter maybe as a female presenting person or an androgynous person, but you don't really feel welcome, because the spaces are very much like all of the artworks and all of the the bartenders, and the kind of the art you see is like, naked men on the walls, and that the music and the scene that they created is for this. But anyway, so most clubs in the world are for gay men, and especially in Europe for white gay men. And I do wonder whether, is there just no women and say non-men who are interested in creating these spaces, or do they just not have access to the kind of capital that you need to create these spaces? Or is it because, for example, most of my friends are either women or non-binary or queer folks, and most of them I've met through activism, and in much more kind of not all of them, but in general more kind of collectives and demonstrations and activist spaces. And I wonder what is this tendency that makes that queer women or LGBT, bisexuals or lesbian women, are more likely to engage in the community work and outreach and charity work, say, than gay men, who are more likely to meet in the evening in nightclubs. I don't know what this is. It would be interesting to read the research about it.
Definitely.
What really has divided the gay space in such a way?
Just a thought. It could be about the marketing strategies and how marketable some production is. And apparently gay men are a marketable profile. So you can use and work on, and you can make videos with. Yeah,
especially middle-class gay white men, I guess, often have certain privileges.
Definitely.
That means they don't need to care much about, let's say, discrimination in other ways than maybe accept their sexuality. Maybe they don't have to worry too much about other types of discrimination that women or people of color and women of color face, and hence they are less likely to engage in activism that fights this kind of injustice. I do feel like several of my lovely, my very lovely but cis male white gay friends sometimes say things that I'm like, what? You are not, and why do you not? They don't even realize it, because they have privileges, and so do I as a white person who is most often very feminine and female presenting, come with certain privileges that make people less likely to engage in activism.
Definitely. Also I think there is a play of the gay LGBTQ spaces in this issue as well, because they just not serve to capitalism or profit, but they also cause degeneration and misinformation. So if you are just a person who came to Prague for a trip, and you want to see to explore, or maybe it's your first time in a gay bar, and you go to some and you see what you see in Prague, and that kind of gives you the idea. So I guess this is how you become a gay. This kind of a homonormativity it proliferates, and I think that's also one of the causes of this.
Could you explain the word homonormativity to people who don't know?
We have heteronormativity, which is the world working, the whole system being planted on heterosexuality. And homonormativity is...
Like, for example, marriage and like inheritance.
The family structure.
Family structure. If you go to visit your loved one in the hospital, like if you start thinking about it, even like having kids in school, like if you start thinking about it, most institutions are built around heterosexual pairings, especially heterosexual marriage pairings. Yeah,
definitely. And homonormativity is the practice among the queer communities that kind of normativates one notion. For example, if you are a queer person, you have to look like this. If you are a gay person, you have to wear this or act this way or make your hair like this. If you're a non-binary, you shouldn't have any gender showing items on yourself, which is kind of putting the notion of homosexuality or other sexualities into a norm, which this is what I meant by...
So basically it would be like, instead of mom and dad, it would be, let's say, husband and husband, but the same house, the picket fence, the Volvo, the 2.5 children, basically. Not that there's anything wrong with domestic life or family built relationships, but the idea that you are not questioning any of the things that might be complicated or problematic, such as capitalism, inheritance, property rights, and so on, in the heteronormative world, you are just taking the same institutions and just changing it to man, woman instead.
Yeah, definitely. Basically just creating new norms in a community that is trying to actually break or dissolve the norms.
So what happens then is that when maybe you have some idea that, I will go to Europe or I will come to Prague and I will experience this amazing freedom of the gay nightlife, but what you realize is that you might not fit into that box, which is European or Western, what that means, or like American idea of like US American idea of gayness. And this is especially something that happens a lot along the borders.
Yep.
Both the EU and the US have these LGBT asylum ships, which on paper look great. Like we help people if you are persecuted based on your sexuality at home, you can come here and we will take care of you. But sadly, what happens a lot is that it is the border guard who gets to decide whether you are gay or not to actually enter the country based on the LGBT asylum ship, and you have to perform gayness then in a way that is both very essentialist, meaning you have to consider gayness to be at the core of your being, part of your identity, and something you were born with, which, as we know, many people don't consider gayness to be the most important part of their identity, and also not something they were born with, but a choice or something that they came into being. I mean, this idea of being born this way gay, while a very strong argument, of course, it is also something that the queer liberation movement would find a lot of fault with, and queer theory finds fault with, because they say where they limit who you can be in life and what you can become and who can enter queer identities. And also what it's supposed to look like, which I think is a good argument.
Oh, absolutely. You need to perform and act.
Yeah. I mean, for some people, obviously, it's not an act.
Of course.
But for other people, queerness might come in very, very different shapes and forms. And it might not be something that you're born with. And for many people, especially if you are in a country that persecutes any kind of same-sex relationships, you don't have evidence of being like gay, let's say, or LGBT or queer. And at the border guard will often demand that you show pictures, which why would you have pictures of your lover or the last 7 years in a monogamous relationship when you were not allowed to do that? And if you look, let's say if you don't have nice, sparkly, glittery clothes on, or you have a big beard, or you don't look feminine enough as a gay man, you might not enter based on the fact that you're probably just lying. Or if you do enter, it's often on the premise that you have to really back and talk shit about your home country. There's this white saviorism that both the EU and the US obviously love to promote and play with, where it's like, okay, you can come, but if you're from Pakistan, then it's because you have to talk really shit about your country. And of course, we all know that there are probably issues in your home country that's the reason why you were trying to go somewhere else. But you have to completely kind of demean talk about like barbarianism and orientalist, or take on an orientalist language that talks down upon your home country as if it was as less intelligent kind of civilization.
Absolutely.
And this is super, super problematic. And it's sadly, I feel like that what we see as well in queer or LGBT or gay bars around Prague. It's this enforcement of the idea of what it means to be gay and who you are as gay. And you certainly can't be like, let's say like, lower class and of color and gay. I mean, that's a contradiction in the mind of these people. And I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent here, but I get so angry when I think about it. I mean, consider big organizations like ILGA, one of the biggest LGBT organizations in Europe. And while they do important statistics and information like this that are used for policy demands, and I think we have to recognize that kind of work they do and the research they have, they also support very, I would say, racist and kind of anti-immigrant policies in certain ways, because they have this idea of, refugees and especially Muslim or Savannah refugees will come and bring their homophobia to Europe, hence we shouldn't support these, as if you couldn't be queer and Savannah at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely crazy, and hence we have to be super, super careful about the kind of Western LGBT politics we support is as queer people. You don't want to be a gay person who supports a policy who literally harms other gay people,
of course, because
of the color of their skin or their nationality. And we see this a lot with modern hate crime prevention. I mean, right now, this idea with hate crime prevention, instead of putting billions of dollars into education and improving people before things happen, it's like, oh, well, this person committed a homophobic slur or did this homophobic assault, which obviously you shouldn't do. I mean, that's horrible. But then they will spend a lot of money on making these policies that then puts a bunch of people in prison, usually, of course, refugees, immigrants, people of color, because we know how the police works. Yep. And they take these people, put them into prisons. But do people become less homophobic because they are in prison? No. Like, obviously not. It's just another way of removing the people from the streets you don't like. And while you should not be allowed, obviously, to say shit to people and to assault people based on their sexuality or their expression, obviously that's horrible. I don't think using billions of dollars or pounds or euros to put people in prison is the way to go about these issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all these marginalized communities, they constantly face this type of behavior. Like it's unstoppable in a way without the education. But the point is, like, yes, people do need education within and outside of the home. Like, so the reason why you're just trying to eliminate this problem by putting people in jail is because you yourself need education first on why you need education, why these people need education.
Deconstruct what you think you already know.
Absolutely. There's a huge need for deconstruction and reconstruction afterwards. And also, like, I think it should be considered, as you said, like, this Savannah people, these Middle Eastern people will come here and bring their homophobias, and this type of a dehumanization of East is just I believe, like, it's quite, like, I get surprised by everything this kind. So it's quite surprising for me, because I think it shouldn't be very difficult to see why some parts of the globe needs education, why they didn't receive education. There are some reasons behind that, and that's most of them kind of roots back to colonization. Yeah. So when you take
queer lives and queer expression was actually, as we view, like, quite prominent and really interesting in many Savannah cultures. Absolutely. And also, like, pre-colonial histories. I'm not saying that everything was great in pre-colonial times and that we should go back to that time and everything was just amazing. Obviously not. I mean, I don't think you can kind of go into that kind of nativism. But I am saying that, for example, in Tunisia, there was really interesting queer expression forms happening before the Catholic Church came in and basically came with their propaganda of man, woman, and monogamy, and what you're supposed to look like, and the sexual relations you're supposed to have. But as we all know, I mean, sexual relations and the control and policing of sexual relations was a huge part of both the church, but also the colonial agenda. Because if you could kind of argue that saving uncivilized and especially kind of like unrational and sexually deviant people from themselves by giving them proper morals and values, well, then you had an argument for why colonization was okay.
Yep.
Or why you were allowed to be in certain countries and settle there to help, help these sexual promiscuous people. And this is such a dangerous thinking, but sadly a dangerous thinking that is still really happening. I did my own thesis in like the kind of homosexuality of immigrant discourse, and how the US, there's most research being done in the US, but I really want it to be done in Denmark too, because this is a big issues in Denmark. I mean, people in Denmark are also very xenophobic and racist, sadly, and there's this self-idea that everything is perfect, which is not, but anyway, that's a side note. But I did my thesis on this, and the what shows is that people consider, for example, refugees or immigrants or even expats. Well, that distinction between an immigrant and expat is complicated, but consider people like this sexually deviant. Like there's a sexual objectification and fetishization and exoticism happening around people of color.
That is what I've been experiencing in Prague so often.
Yeah,
like it's actually quite frustrating and tough to deal with. Literally just one time, just an experience. I was just walking with my friend. She's also from Turkey, and we were just walking around Andiel, somewhere like that. And this random person just stopped us, and he said like, "Stop! Wait a second." And I was a bit like, "Okay, yeah, hi." And he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, we're from Turkey." And he said, "Wow, you both look very exotic, by the way." And my brain was, what do you mean? how can someone just consider this as something that they should say? Like how this mindset works is so interesting for me. So actually very intriguing question for me. So my experience is most of the time like that, both sexually and socially, a constant exoticism and exoticism. So I would like to explain a little bit about what exotism is. It's a kind of fetishization, romanticization of a person through their culture, their ethnicity, their physical appearance or features, which is actually quite dangerous because it causes, it kind of serves to alienate certain people from a geography. I'm here and I've been here for 3 years, and I might have been here for 10 years, and I might be a citizen of Czech Republic right now, but that wouldn't stop that person to stop me on the road without any idea of who I am and tell me, "You look very exotic." Well, no, I am a Czech person like you, but you will always perceive me as an outsider, an exotic species that just dropped here and is just walking around. This is very alienating, very dehumanizing, and this has been my experience in Prague. Like, I could say this is the most common thing that happened to me.
Does this also happen to you in the LGBT spaces?
Well,
in gay bars, for example.
It does, of course. A lot of sexualization, a lot of objectification, and just seeing you as this, this unusual type of person here to, that you can actually just use to meet your sexual desires. That is an opportunity. You are just an opportunity there for them to, take a taste or something. Yeah. Which is very, I believe, a very unhealthy situation.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's hopefully, but the kind of beating or defeating these kind of thinking, or this is so difficult.
It is so difficult.
And I don't even know where we would start. I mean, I think education is part of the answer, but I mean, just we can talk even about borders. Yeah. And of course, very, very modern, very racist kind of the bureaucracy that goes around visums and countries, and the kind of history we learn in schools, and then politics that we promote, the pink washing we do on a national governmental level.
Yeah, the way we see today.
Yeah, what we see everywhere. But it's
I think the first step is the first thing to do is just to be there and to challenge this and just join in some communities and try to be present. And
I think also not to be afraid of having these conversations.
Absolutely.
I feel one of the things that I sometimes get frustrated with I mean, I'm part of the activist community. I love it, and obviously there's things that can be better. I know that many things can be much better in Pangea that we are working on. I mean, we're a small group. We're still trying to figure it out too. But one of the things that I can get frustrated with is that I feel like more and more on both sides of the spectrum in activism, there's that people don't really want to engage in conversations that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I understand that you don't want to talk to someone who denounces your humanity and who don't see you as a person, because talking to someone like that is like, you know, running into a wall and getting hurt at the same time mentally, right? But at the same time, I think saying, well, then we just don't engage, or we just don't show up, or we just don't be there, or we won't have a panel discussion with someone we don't like.
Yeah.
I think as an organization, not as a person necessarily, as a person, I think you are allowed to do what you want, but as a collective and an organization, I think you have a kind of responsibility to show up even to the panel discussions you hate. And I have been in some horrible ones. I was invited to one of the called Metropolitan University, where I was sitting on a board only with, you know, very renowned professors from Oxford, who were, by the way, all was super transphobic. And the conversation happened to be about the whole lecture, or the topic of the conference was politics of gender in like high governmental levels. But every single person on the board was, I mean, absolute assholes, and they all knew each other in advance, so they were all like petting each other's shoulders and, you know, hey, how are you doing, and drinking prosecco. And I was there as a token, both female and queer and non-binary person. I ticked, if I had, I mean, I ticked a lot of the extra boxes, but still, we were all a white panel, of course. There were no person of color on the panel, and sitting there, you know, they were just agreeing with each other, and it's super difficult, and it was hateful, and I left actually crying afterwards. But 3 people come up to me and said, "I'm so happy you were there," because of course, like, I don't reflect myself in these people at all. I don't know anything about this topic, and what you said, even though obviously they just spoke over me sometimes, was important to me. And I think hence you have to show up at these spaces regardless of how uncomfortable you are as a collective.
I do understand that nobody kind of has to
educate other people,
educate
as
others.
an individual.
Absolutely, I do understand the feeling. It could be actually very frustrating. You do get very frustrated when you were to get in a debate or a discussion with someone who is totally not listening. But but on a personal level of myself, and also as a collective, as you said, I don't know, a gender studies scholar and a teacher myself, I do believe it may sound kind of cliche, but I am of the people that thinks just changing this perspective, or touching on just one person, is touching to a family, and touching to a family is touching to a neighborhood. So it is a collective. It's like snowball. I think
it
has a snowball effect, I believe. It just
or
grows
ripples
and
in
grows.
the water.
Definitely. So I do believe joining in the advocacy and activist work is very, very valuable and very necessary.
And everyone should join in if they care about something. I mean, how is there anyone out there who is not affected in certain ways by, you know, some injustice that happens or discrimination? Obviously, some people are way, way more affected than other people. But even breathing this air affects you, because the air is polluted, let's say.
Absolutely. Or
global warming, or the way you do realize. We all know this. I don't know why I'm saying this. Everyone knows this. But I'm just saying, even if you feel like certain issues, like what's happening in Palestine or in Sudan or in Congo, or, you know, in Armenia or around the world, and you feel like this is nothing to do with me, why would I even care? Then, like, it is connected to you in some ways. And you should care. And if you don't know anything about it, that's because you have a shit education system, right?
Yep.
And hence we need to seek knowledge more. And
like right now, for example, I maybe, like, in an alternative universe, I could be just doing my studies and getting my diploma and working in a corporate and just not getting involved in any queer feminist work. But I first of all don't feel comfortable thinking that, because I have a certain level of privilege. I came here, I moved out of Turkey, my parents are carrying the burden, I am carrying a burden, and I do feel the privilege that kind of gave me all this life that I have in Prague right now. And I am not able to at least, like, sleep without giving back something in return, because I do know for a fact that there are actually a lot of people that kind of depends on the advocacy that I can put out, or anyone can put out. So I think it is a responsibility that comes kind of roots in the privilege that we all have.
Yeah, because as you say, some people obviously, because of the grueling work hours they have, or family life, or other responsibilities, and also safety. I mean, in Prague, we've heard crazy stories of people who got fired from their work because they showed up at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. So obviously, I understand too that even engaging in this kind of work takes free time. Absolutely. It takes free time. It takes access to social media platforms. Mm-hmm. It takes also lots of resources that we are both very lucky to have. Yeah. So of course, no judgment for those who don't have that kind of privilege to engage. But if you do have that kind of privilege or a bit of extra time, then either a group like a Pangea, but there's so many cool collectives like Pro-Fem, Prague for Palestine, United for Gaza, Consent, the Anarchist Collective, and Plusco. Many of these collectives are doing really, really cool work. Yeah. And wherever you're sitting, maybe this is just in Prague. I'm sure there must be some at home.
And also, like, I think it's worth mentioning that most of the members of Pangea, volunteers of Pangea, are doing full-time jobs. And in addition to that, with the free time we have, we kind of try to make some progress with the advocacy work that we are doing. And we join the meetings and prepare some plans and everything. So it is actually like, yes, we do have free time, and it is up to us how to use it, I guess. Of course, it's not like asking for devoting your whole life or anything.
No, but it can be less than an hour a week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Which, but now we are doing a little bit of like self-promo here. Then I would also say, what is the time? Do you have any idea of how long we have talked?
15 minutes.
Oh my God. Okay. We were so nervous about not being able to speak for an hour, and here we are. Yeah. We don't have to. We talked about having to speak about Shrek or something, but we're doing fine. So since there is only a few minutes left, let me do a little bit more promo, because that's why probably that's not why we were invited, but since we're here and there's no one in the room with us, so we can do what we want.
It's all ours. Can we play some songs to be honest?
Let's put it on right now. We have tomorrow at Safe Space Bookstore, which is, by the way, super cute, queer-owned bookstore and cafe, vegan cafe in, where is it? Oh my God, this is so bad of us. I don't know. Look it up, Safe Space Bookstore Prague.
And it's going to be on Instagram.
Yeah. We meet up there tomorrow at 8 o'clock together with the BIPOC and Svana group Bedana, which is a really cool other collective you should follow if you're part of the BIPOC community here. And we meet there tomorrow at 8 o'clock for our monthly book club called the Book Club, because we are not very creative people and we have no creative bone in our body.
If you feel like you are creative, please.
So we'll meet up there tomorrow. And even if you haven't read the book, which is by the amazing feminist, intersectional, off-color, lesbian writer Audre Lorde, it's called Sammy, A New Spelling of My Name. You can still come and just talk about that, or talk about the next book club meeting and the book we are reading.
Or just enjoy the discussion.
Exactly. And then we will have the next event after this will be the next Pangea education session on September 10th, which will be at the LGBT Center. And we are actually watching a documentary about abortion, I think by a Danish filmmaker, but I'm not even there.
Okay.
But someone else recommended it. So there will be some knowledge and talk about abortion and abortion rights. And then I think following that, there will be an education session on human trafficking in Ecuador by one of our members, Adrian from Ecuador, which is going to be very interesting.
Very interesting, yeah.
So there is lots of cool events happening. And then last but not least, should I mention the fundraiser?
Yep.
Yes, I'm going to mention the fundraiser. Okay. So as we already talked about some of the amazing collectives that we're working with and that you should follow if you don't know them already here in Prague, including Prague for Palestine. But this time we are actually working with the amazing immigrant collective Tempelhof, which is led by an amazing person called Lea. And they do amazing rave and like music events for the community, especially as well for the Svana community. And Tempelhof, together with Fiki Productions, which is a performance and drag collective for new and upcoming queer artists in Prague. And together with, is one more, maybe the Kiki House of Fire, we will see.
Yeah.
And Estrogen, which is a trans femme collective. We are doing all of these collectives together, and Pangea are doing a fundraiser on October 11th, Friday, October 11th at Klubovna, second Patro, at 8 o'clock, and it will go until the early morning, and there will be both, maybe some voguing, but there'll definitely be some performances, maybe hopefully some belly dancing, we will see. Yes, by Fifi. Shout out to Fifi and the Fiki Productions. And then there will be amazing DJs and music by Estrogen and Temple Love. So that will be on October 11th. Yes. And then there might also, but this is not posted yet, so this is insider knowledge. But hopefully the weekend after that, there will be Palestine weekend. Organized by Prague for Palestine, United for Gaza, Pangea, Academics Against Apartheid, and Palestine Club.
Okay.
Yeah. So this date is not released yet, so this is insider knowledge for those who are following this radio show. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
I hope it was interesting and we didn't speak too much off the tangent.
I think we did well.
I think we did okay. Maybe we'll be back. Hopefully they will have us back, or maybe they see this and they'll be like, "Oh,
no,
we never want to see these people again." We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. So, final but not least, follow us on Pangea_Prague on Instagram or pangeapublic.org. Yep. And follow Prague for Palestine. And you should do that.
Follow all the collectives.
Who is this? God? Some deity?
I had the visuals. Okay. The collective names.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.